So today's video is all about the new Vivo X200 Pro. Let's have a short conversation about my impressions so far about it when it comes to the phone itself. Anyway, let's jump into the video. So before we start the rest of the video, let's quickly look at the specifications for the Vivo X200 Pro. We get the Dimensity 9400 inside of it, 12 up to 16 GB of RAM, 256 GB up to 1 TB of memory, which is UFS 4.0. We get a 6.78 inch LTPO AMOLED display with 120Hz refresh rate and a peak brightness of 4500 nits. For the resolution, it's 2800 by 1260, which results into a 452 ppi. For the camera setup, we get a 50 megapixel main sensor with an f-stop of 1.6, 23mm equivalent and a 1/1.28 inch sensor size. We get a 200 megapixel periscope which has an f-stop of 2.7, 85mm equivalent and a 1/1.4 inch sensor size. We also have a 50 megapixel ultra wide which has an f-stop of 2.0, 50mm equivalent and a 1/2.76 inch sensor size. Video recording is max up to 8K and 30 frames per second and at 4K 120 frames per second max. We get a 32 megapixel front facing camera with an f-stop of 2.0 and 20mm equivalent and video recording up to 4K and 60 frames per second. We also get a ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, a 6000 mAh battery, 90 watt wire charging and 30 watt wireless charging. For the price itself, it's about 800 euros for the starting version, which is via Trading Shenzhen. There are other options, so be sure to check out whether you have possibilities in your area. Now, while I've been using it for about a week, a little bit more, I will say one thing that really impressed me when it comes to the Vivo X200 Pro is battery life. I've been taking this to France and I had to drive there. It was about 4 hours, a little bit over 4 hours, and I was using this as navigation. Screen on all the time, about half brightness itself. When I went there to France and I was arriving there, I had about, I think it was 61% left on the battery itself, so about 39-40% drainage. For that amount of time, that's really solid. At the end of the day, I made it home and took a lot of shots there in France and video as well, and I still had battery life left on it. I think it was about 21%. That's really impressive because I had to drive 4 hours back, of course, again, where I used it again as navigation. Battery life so far has been really impressive, and that's going to matter to me when it comes to a phone because I like to use it as camera as well. So battery life so far has been really impressive on the Vivo X200 Pro. Now naturally, one thing that we gotta discuss when it comes to the Vivo X200 Pro is the camera. I'm gonna keep it short when it comes to this kind of video. I really want to showcase that more on my other channel, but when it comes to the camera itself, this has impressed me a lot so far. It's a little bit different when it comes to the camera performance itself. Like the Vivo X100 Ultra, it has a little bit more contrast to it, a little bit more feel, if that makes sense. But when it comes to the camera, this has been really capable with great zoom capabilities. Are there AI features into this phone itself? Yes. For instance, I've seen some shots where I'm trying to take a shot with a light and then I have the moon behind it. And then, yeah, you will get somewhat of an artificial moon. And I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that. It really depends on the shot you're making because it can enhance the shot itself. But again, it really depends on the shot itself, whether I like it or not. When it's the moon itself that I'm trying to shoot, I don't want to see a replacement or AI features enhancing the moon itself. I want to see what the hardware itself is capable of. And if it's done via AI or anything like that, then I feel like I'm not really seeing the result of the camera itself. I'm seeing more what the processing is like, if that makes sense. Now when it comes to the Vivo X200 Pro, as stated, I've taken it to different locations, like for instance France, where I'm showing shots of right now. But when it comes to the Vivo X200 Pro and the testing of the camera itself, it is still somewhat limited. It's pretty much cloudy every single day and therefore it acts like a diffuser. It doesn't really allow me to test the dynamic range, it doesn't tell me anything about how it processes the blue sky or anything like that. And of course shadows as well, especially in golden hour, which is one of my favorite times to record shots at, because simply put, it's stunning to record shots at that time. Either way, when it comes to the Vivo X200 Pro, there are some shots that I really like about it, and I think right now I would say the capability of the camera is really solid. So I'm just showcasing some shots that I've taken on, of course, this Vivo X200 Pro. I also quickly want to discuss the fingerprint scanner. Now this is the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. Now there is a difference between an optical fingerprint scanner and an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. An optical fingerprint scanner is basically a lens of a camera is below your display and it lights up to then take a 2D scan of your fingerprint. If it matches it, then it will unlock your phone. With an ultrasonic, it's actually sound waves going up and down, and then it scans the depth of your fingerprint grooves to then find out whether you're the person or not. Now this one doesn't have the second generation that we see, for instance, on the Vivo X200 Pro Plus or the X80 Pro. When it comes to that one, definitely I prefer that one because it has a larger working area. To register, you only need to press it once, and of course it is a little bit faster. That being said, when it comes to the fingerprint scanner on the Vivo X200 Pro, it is really reliable and it is really fast. And for me, it makes such a difference when it comes to the use of the phone itself. So a really solid fingerprint scanner on the Vivo X200 Pro. Just not as nice as the X90 Pro Plus or the X80 Pro, because simply put, they were nicer. So far with the X200 Pro, I will say it's a really interesting device, and I find it interesting that they are using the same periscope as you get on the Vivo X100 Ultra, and it only makes me more exciting about what is going to come for the X200 Ultra. And I've heard a rumor that it will actually have a 35mm equivalent main sensor, and that's huge for photographers because it creates a really different compression. You can then use the ultra wide to create like the 24mm equivalent as well, but I think a 35mm equivalent sensor without it cropping into the main sensor itself is really going to be a huge deal for those who love photography, and I think that's going to matter, and I'm really excited to see whether that is true or not. We're gonna have to wait and see at the end. But when it comes to the X200 Pro, so far it has been a really solid phone, especially when it comes to the camera itself, when it comes to the battery life, and also a really solid display so far. Sure, the Dimensity 9400 isn't going to be as fast as, for instance, what you get with the Snapdragon 8 Elite, but honestly, most of the time people won't use that kind of power. So for me, I'm perfectly fine with it. Anyway, I do hope that you enjoyed this video about the Vivo X200 Pro and my impressions so far, because it's only an impression so far, not a full review by any means. But right now, I feel like this has been a really impressive device. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video and talk to you guys in the next.